Okay, so today we are going to introduce the souls. Now, many of you have an idea of what the soul represents, what it looks like, what its function is, and what we discussed in this class may or may not be in line of your previous knowledge. That doesn't mean to say that it is what you know before isn't correct. But I just want you to leave an open mind for the sake of this class, of another avenue, another perspective of the soul. This Facebook Live thing is not working out very well for me. Okay, so let's just turn it off. Okay. So why talk about souls in the first place? I like to say many times, if some of you that heard me giving other classes has heard me saying that what we care is a practical application. How can we take a lesson out of it? So we have all these beautiful Torah lessons from the parsha and this and that. If we look at the holiday or the parsha or the lesson that we're looking at is something ancient or something intellectual, something that happened 2,000 years ago, and it's not applicable to ourselves, then it's very nice, but I feel like it's missing the main point. So when we're talking about a soul, that's something you can't put your finger on. Why is that applicable to us? So in truth, our soul is not a very removed concept. True, if you go to a dictionary definition of what a soul means, tell you something which is not physical, something which you cannot basically relate to. But in reality, it has a much greater significance than that. Meaning to say, when you meet somebody and you call them a genuinely nice, and you consider them a genuinely nice person, 99% of the time is because that when you met them, they smiled at you and they treated you like a decent human being. It is possible that under the hood, that person is quite evil. Or an exact opposite situation. You met somebody and you think they're really not a nice person. The reality is they're just grumpy. They had a really difficult morning. And if you would just know what kind of morning they had, you would excuse them for anything. Right? But because this is the way they interacted with you, this is the way you feel like they are. And the same thing is true, not just with personalities. The same thing is true with everything that we perceive and as we interact with our life, and anything we try to understand. There's understanding on the surface, and there's understanding what's behind it. In other words, even in ourselves, when we say, "Oh, I like ice cream," right? There's two ways to look at it. There's saying, "I like ice cream because I know I like it. It tastes good," right? Or you could understand something a little better. You can understand how the taste buds work. You can understand what kind of tastes are in the ice cream, and understand why your taste buds works in connection with those particular things, etc., etc. Someone's not well, they need medicine. They go to the doctor. For me, I know my car's not working, my body's not working. I gotta go to the doctor. I gotta go to my mother, the best doctor of them all, right? And she's gonna prescribe what I gotta do, and that's it. I know I gotta do. Gotta press the button on. But the doctor or the mechanic knows what they gotta do under the hood. They understand what's happening under the hood. So the same thing is true for ourselves. There's the way we know ourselves. There's the way we interact with our daily lives. And then there's our deeper selves. Then there's under the hood. Then there's on a surface level, we could call it our psychology. What's our conscious? What makes us tick? Right? If you want to truly better yourself, it's not just about changing one habit. It's about changing it's about changing what makes you tick. It's about changing your perspective of things. So that's why it's very important to familiarize ourselves with our soul, because our soul is not merely something which is spiritual, that's beyond our grasp, but rather it's actually what is our daily function. Now, before we get too deep into soul talk, I want to ask a question, and As everyone's muted, I want each person to answer the question honestly in their own four walls. Would you consider yourself a good person? Would you consider yourself a wicked, evil person? Or would you leave yourself someplace in between? I hope nobody chose option B, but give it a thought. Okay, we'll get back to this later on. So let's do some soul talk now. If you noticed, I mentioned at the beginning of the class that I said I'm going to introduce you to the souls. That's what I titled this class as well. I didn't say one soul. I said souls. Because in reality, every single one of us is comprised of not just one soul, but two souls. Today, we're going to focus on one of them. And the next class, we're going to focus on the next one. We're still going to introduce you to both of them. The first soul that I'm going to introduce you to is a soul that sustains us. Actually, if you're going to give a one-liner definition of a soul, it's your life source. It's your sustainer. It's your battery pack. The first soul we'll introduce is the soul that sustains us in a very real and physical way. It's the life force behind our body. Everybody knows that a body without a life could have all the organs working properly, and therefore there could be a discussion of organ donations, etc. Everything be working properly, but if the soul is not there, the body is not alive. The first soul simply keeps the body alive. Now, this soul sounds very nice at the initially, the onset. However, if you take a little better glimpse at this soul, you see that it's very physical centered. Meaning to say, because the soul is the soul which sustains my physical life, therefore it's conscious and its direction is by what it knows and feels. The great saying goes, I know that I am because I feel that I am. I know that I'm alive because I feel I'm alive. Right? Still not too bad. However, if you take a deeper look, even deeper look into this soul, you realize because it's all about how it feels and how it can thrive in an extension, it's really an egotistical soul because it's all about me. Why is it all about me? Because what I know best is me. Is because the reality is what I know and feel. What I know and feel the best is myself. And therefore, if I will gain off of it, if this will make me happy, if this will make me happy, or I think will make me happy, if I get instant gratification off it, this is what I enjoy. Sometimes it comes out in a very in-your-face, very revealed way, and sometimes it's more mellow. Sometimes we really feel like we're saving the world, we're helping somebody else, but deep down, it's all about our own personal interests. Now, this self-centered conscious, could also be the source and the reason why we love somebody. I love him, I love her, because it makes me feel loved, makes me feel complete. However, not that that is all bad, but if we just stay at that level, we just stick with this conscious, with this soul, then it eventually will unravel. Because love is not about myself, it's about the person you're loving. And eventually, that's going to unravel. And eventually, your spouse is going to tell you, you don't love me, you love yourself. So there was something that I used to do, there's a shtick that I used to do that made you feel good. I used to have a certain smirk when I smile, and that made you happy. Or there was a certain food I was able to cook. What happens when I can't cook that food? What happens if I get a lazy eye one day and I can't smirk that way? What happens if I lose my looks? If it's not about, if it was just about how how it makes me feel, then it's really me loving myself. It's not me loving you, and eventually it will be unraveled. Therefore, obviously, there's a much deeper level of love, and therefore, obviously, this is not the ultimate what we're looking for. I'll tell you even more. With this conscious, which is essentially ego-centered, even though it's harsh words and we don't like to accept that. But we all made up of this. The most righteous to the most evil person is all made up of this composition of these two souls. Some more revealed and some more less revealed way. This is also the reason why I get upset. I get upset is because how dare you offend me? How do you do something that does not work with what I think I deserve? This is also the reason why you get lazy. Because I feel myself so much that I can't dig my head out of myself, out of my own problems. Sometimes the best cure for someone going through a hard time is seeing how someone else is going through a harder time. Not that I'm suggesting that, but that idea, what does it do? It digs you out of your head in the sand. It digs you out of just thinking about your own problems and seeing there's a world around you, there's other people around you, there's other existences except for myself. And all the bad attributes, all the attributes that we do not want to associate ourselves with, are all sourced from this soul, from this conscious. Now, if we were stuck if we only had this conscious, then we would have to grapple with the idea about what are we doing here, and if it's even possible for us to change. Do we even want to change, right? And there's lots of movements that says, this is the way I'm born, this is the way I am, right? Obviously that's not the way. Obviously, every single human being, a definition of human being is growing. The definition of a human being is that whatever my challenges or however good I was yesterday, I'm going to be better tomorrow. Or any challenges that I was not perfect yesterday, I'm going to better myself and become a better person tomorrow. So how do we do this? If this is our conscious, if this is our soul, this is the most essential part of our body, or a part of our existence, how could we combat that? And the answer is that we have another soul. We have another soul, and that soul's conscious is the exact opposite of the first soul's conscious. This soul we're going to speak about in greater depth in the next session. But because we have another soul which has the exact opposite conscious, the exact opposite ambitions, therefore we could challenge ourselves, and we could change the way we naturally are. Now, all the examples that I gave are extremely physical. Physical, not in a way that you can touch it, but physical in a very worldly way. I didn't mention anything about God. I didn't mention anything about Torah. I didn't mention anything about mitzvahs. And I did that because I feel like it's a way, because this is the first soul that we interact with, the first consciousness that we interact with. Therefore, in a certain sense, it's something that we could better relate to. But in reality, this soul is the same soul that says, I know I'm Jewish, and I'm proud to be a Jew, and I celebrate my Judaism in certain ways. Maybe Passover. I celebrate the holiday of Passover, and I know I have to have a Seder. What happens? Comes year 2020, and God plagues us with this coronavirus, and all of a sudden I'm stuck at home. I can't do the Seder the way I normally do it. I can't do it with my family. I can't do it with my community. I can't do it. It's an isolated celebration. For me, a holiday is with life, with people, with things happening. On top of that, to stay at home. It's not fun to go to the stores. It's not very easy. You got to mask yourself, put on gloves. You got to make sure you stay away, not bump into someone. You got to make sure you stay away with 6 feet. Everyone's walking around with tape measures to see how far 6 feet is, right? And on top of that, when you go to the store, they don't have half of the stuff you need. Everyone's grabbing whatever they can. You know what? Halas, enough. This year we'll cancel Passover. This year we'll cancel Passover Seder. That conscious comes from from the first soul that we're introducing. Or for any example you would like to think that you can think of. Any mitzvah that you know you should be doing it. And all of a sudden this little feeling, this drive pops into your head and says, I'm not interested. I can't. It's too costly. I can't give charity. I can't spend on a holiday. I can't spend on the mitzvah. I'd rather go on a vacation. I'd rather go out to eat. I'd rather go to the movies. I'd rather make myself feel better. That is coming from this conscious. Therefore, in the Kabbalistic works, this soul is called the Nefesh Habahamit, loosely translated as the animalistic soul. Why animalistic? Animals are beautiful. And so is the soul beautiful. But the animals are limited to a certain amount of ambition. They can be called, you could consider an animal very, very intelligent. However, we don't see in an obvious way how an animal cares for more than what they need to survive. That's why other people like to call the soul the survival soul. It's also less rough on the edges than an egotistical soul, egocentric soul. They're both true. The survival soul and an egotistical soul, they both bring out the same concept. And an animalistic soul all bring out the same idea, is that I care about the me and the now. I care about something that I could relate to, something that I could put my finger on. What is that? What is that I can put my finger on? That is my physical body, my own pleasures, my enjoyment. It's true sometimes, as we said before, that my enjoyment will be in helping someone else out, right? Which is where we see this soul is very beautiful as well. And the fact is, it keeps us alive. However, it's also the cause of all those challenges that we spoke about. It's also what drives you away from Judaism. It's also the conscious which drives you away from being connected to God. Because at the definition, as we will see in the next class, of a Jew, is that it's constantly striving for something greater than itself. And striving for something greater than yourself is the exact opposite of feeling oneself. I'm sure I didn't miss any points out over here. Perfect. This brings us back to an idea that we spoke about in the introduction class last time, is that in many ways that these two souls act as a candle. The animalistic soul, the survival soul, drives us and centers us to be alive. Its conscious is to physically be alive, and therefore we feel hungry, We feel the need to eat. We need a food. We feel the need to sustain ourselves, to be profitable, etc., etc. That's the wax or the wick of a candle. The next soul that we're going to speak about in next class accomplishes the exact opposite. That doesn't feel itself at all. It's not trying to achieve more. It's not trying to get more honors. It's not trying to gain more wealth or anything like that. It is striving for something greater than itself. The challenge with something that's striving for greater than itself is that it can leave itself. If you're constantly only caring about the other person, then you're going to give all your money away to the other person. Right? If you're too nice, that's also dangerous. If you're too nice, when your kid asks you, "Oh, daddy, I want to play with the knife," you're going to say, "Yes, for sure, whatever you want, sweetheart." Right? Being too nice is also a challenge. So therefore, it's important that we have both of these souls. And we will talk at a greater length of the functions of each of the souls and every aspect of the function, the builds, the psychological build of each conscious in the future classes. And we'll also talk about in a practical way what aspect of what conscious is speaking to us at what time. How can we decipher who's talking at that moment? Sometimes it's not that clear, and how to properly react to that. But before we get into all of that, we in the immediate coming classes, we're gonna have to introduce ourselves to the other soul and to the structure of each soul of what it achieves and how it relates to us. Now, I'd like to go back to the question that I asked you previously. A righteous person, an evil person, or someplace in between. In Hebrew, these three categories are brought down throughout Jewish Sfarim for millennium, from the times of the Talmud to the Mishnah. And in Hebrew, they're called the tzaddik. Tzaddik is the righteous one, or the one that's always good. The Rasha is the evil one. And a Beinoni means someplace in between. Now, if we look at each one of these, as we said at the beginning of the class, at its surface level, it would mean as follows. And like I assume most of you actually took this question in the first place. In other words, to say, in order to answer this question honestly and properly, first you have to define what is a good person, what is a tzaddik, what is someone who's an intermediate. So on the surface level, someone who's for the most part is a nice person, does the right thing. That's a tzaddik. What's a righteous person? A righteous person who's for the most part, they do the right thing, they're righteous, right? Does it mean that they never make mistakes? They make mistakes. On the flip side, an evil person on the surface level is someone who at least the way they interact with me, does for the most part, they're very selfish, they're very they're conniving, they're evil for the most part. Do they never do anything good? Of course they do good. Stories of the biggest murderers that they would help people take the shirts off their back. I know myself. I not that I know myself. I had the opportunity to help out the Jewish community in Koh Samui, Thailand, as many of you know. And one of the characters that I dealt with on a regular basis, his name was Ori, and he was at the very least he was a mobster. At the very least, he was a mobster. He said, "Peretz, you're going to invite me to your wedding?" I said, "For sure." He said, "You have to make the wedding here." Why? Because he can't go anywhere else. If he goes anywhere else in the world, he gets arrested. I didn't ask him what he did. At the same time, Thailand it's not fun. There's a lot of corruption there, and there was a lot of Jewish tourists that every so often would get arrested, either for things that they did wrong or things that they were framed for. So it's very important to get them out of that system ASAP, because they could be arrested corruptly. You could also take them out of the justice system corruptly as well, through bribery. So naturally, they would come somehow. Someone, a friend or cousin or a girlfriend or boyfriend, would come running to the Chabad center over there, and a lot of times that was the point of contact. They would say, "So and so just got arrested. What do we do?" And obviously, you can understand that they're falling apart. And the answer is that what they had to do, they had to bribe their way out. How to bribe your way out? You have to be professional in bribing. You don't just pull $20 out of your wallet. You have to know how much money to pull out, who to give it to, etc., etc. Who was my point of contact? My point of contact was this guy, Ori, this mobster. And he, every single time, he could have been in the middle of a business deal. She was a very successful businessman over there, believe it or not. He could have been a huge business deal. He could have been in the middle of a dinner. He could have been he could have been on a date. He would drop everything. He'd say, "Rabbi, I'll be there in 10 minutes." It didn't make a difference what he was doing. He'll be there in 10 minutes. And within 24 hours, every single time, and it happened when I was there at least 6 times, within 24 hours, without a doubt, he successfully got them out. Is this guy a tzaddik? I'm not one to judge. But according to the justice system in most countries, he was no tzaddik. He was no righteous person. However, he had a really good streak to him. So I think for most people would consider such a person as a mobster, as a gangster. A gangster is not good. An intermediate person is someone who has struggles. Some days they have good days, and some days they have bad days. Are they an evil person? No. Some days they have a bad day. When they get angry, they get really angry. But when they're in a good mood, that's the person you want to be around. But as we said before, we like to look at things at a deeper level. We like to look under the hood because that's not really who they are. Really, the true definition of who I am is by what makes me tick. What is my conscience? Or even more so, not just what my conscience is, what do I do with my conscience? We all have times that we're lazy. We all have times that we're sad to some extent, or even depressed to some extent. We all have times that our nefesh habahamis, our animalistic soul, takes control over ourselves, or makes a lot of noise and says, be depressed, be sad, be angry. But that's not who we are. It's a characteristic that we have. It's not who you truly are. Look under the hood. You have the power to change that. How do you have the power to change that? Because it's not your only soul. It's not your only definition. It's not your only characteristics. You have two souls. You have the nefesh habahamis, the animalistic soul that's trying to feel alive or trying to feel, period. It forgets about what the word alive means. Right? That's the contradiction of this soul, is that it eats the hand that it feeds it. It wants to feel so much that it forgets to feel alive. And the part of feeling is being alive. We have that conscience that pushes us to be sad or be angry. But if we know that's not who we are, there's another soul that battles with it, that tells you, no, it's not good to be angry. Forget about why you're angry for a second. It's not good to be angry. Let's get out of this rut. In the future, in the coming classes, we will discuss also how to get out of, after we introduce the construct of the attributes of the soul. We will talk about how to get yourself out of that situation. But the very fact that we have another soul, it gives us that ability to climb out of that situation. So now let's take another look at what a good person is, an evil person is, intermediate. A tzaddik, a righteous person, also has two consciences. But the conscience that only talks is the conscience of being greater than oneself. Anything that's egocentric, anything that is self-centered, anything that is only I will gain off of it, that conscience is silenced by him. Absolutely silenced. It's not that he has a thought that he pushes out of his mind. It's absolutely silenced by that person. An evil person is, obviously they have the second soul, which we're going to talk about the next class, which has the consciousness and ambition for something greater than itself. But what is the primary voice in their soul? What's the primary voice in their mind? The primary voice in their mind is to achieve, to connect to God, to celebrate the Judaism. And therefore, when it comes to a mitzvah, it's not a question, how much does it cost? It's absolutely, how do I do it? I have an opportunity to help somebody? Tell me more. Who else could I help? I see an opportunity that someone else could use comfort. I'm in a tough situation myself. I lost my job, or suffering of battling a disease, or I'm locked in my house and nobody wants to talk to me. Right? Imagine someone's locked in their house and they don't want to talk to their spouse and they don't talk to their kids. That's the worst situation. You know what can lift them up? But you picking up the phone call and calling them and saying, "Oh, there's another person in the world that cares about me." You know how easy that is to pick up the phone to call someone else? However, in order to be able to do that, you have to forget about your own problems for a second. That is a tzaddik. A tzaddik is the one that completely silenced his animalistic soul. He doesn't have that conscious of self-centered stuff. So when it comes to mitzvah, 100% he does it. Any opportunity to become a better person, any opportunity to connect to God, he connects. A Rasha hardly hears that voice. A Rasha, an evil person, hardly hears that voice. An evil person, whatever comes to my mind, whatever I feel like, I do. You ask them, why are you doing this? Because I feel like that. That is someone who's absolutely controlled by their animalistic soul. And if someone does only because if someone lives such a lifestyle, they do because what they feel like, then it eventually could lead them to a very, very scary, dark place. The ultimate can be murder, torture, because they just feel like it. There is no sense of conscious of caring about another existence. This is what I feel like, and therefore I'm going to do it. I hope most of us is not going to get that dark. But if we allow the nefesh of Bahamas, that animalistic soul, to take complete control, it's going to become stronger and stronger, and it could eventually lead to that place. That's a Russian. What's the intermediate? In Hebrew called a Beinoni. A Beinoni is like most of us are, I believe, or I'll let you answer this question in a moment. A Beinoni is someone who hears both, has the conscience to say, why should I? What do I gain off of it? We all say that. Why should I do this? What am I going to gain? It's going to make me feel better? Okay. Am I going to make money off of this? Okay. Am I going to get more respect out of this? Okay. If not, why should I? It's going to make me feel more connected, even in a spiritual sense. It's going to make me feel more connected, make me feel, then I'll do it. At the same time, we have the other consciousness speaking. That's heard loud and clear. You know you're a Jew. You know you're a proud Jew. It's a mitzvah. Forget about if it's going to make you feel better. Sure, it'll make you feel better. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will. Some will more than others. This is celebrating who I am. This is celebrating Judaism. This is celebrating the idea that I'm part of something greater than just myself. And then the other voice comes and says, but it's very expensive. It's very timely. It's very stressful. I'll leave it for the holy people. I'll leave it for the people, the ultra-Orthodox. I'll leave it for people that take this whole Judaism thing way too seriously. That comes out also. But what do you mean? You're turning your back? You don't want to turn your back on who you are. Nobody wants to forego their Judaism. That's why, historically speaking, many, many, many times, and many different times in history, and by many different groups, the Jewish people were challenged. They said, convert or die. The Spanish Inquisition was not the only time in history that happened. And every generation happens in a different version, in a different sense. 99.9% of the time, if the person felt Jewish before that day, they could have been the person that ate Chazer and Yom Kippur, could have cared the least about any Jewish practice. So I'll do anything, but I'm not going to turn my back on Judaism. Why? Because that is the other soul that we're going to talk about the next time, was fought back and said, I am not going to disconnect. I have a combination of both. There's a constant battle within me. And sometimes I listen to the way I feel. And sometimes I listen to the way I know I should be. Sometimes I listen to what I'm just desiring, to eat the cake. And sometimes I know that I shouldn't be eating the cake. It's not good for me. Sometimes I take control over myself. Sometimes I say, you know what? Too much work. Let's cancel Passover. And sometimes I say, no, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. And it's not just that sometimes we say one thing or the other. We constantly have both of these ideas, both of these consciousnesses battling who's going to be the ultimate, who's going to have the ultimate control over our thought, speech, and action. Who is going to win? So now, if we ask ourselves, what are we? Are we a Russia? Hope not. Could be. Are we an evil person? Is our animalistic instincts what has absolute control over us, over ourselves? Hope not. But it could be. Am I a tzaddik? Do I have no selfish instincts whatsoever, ever? I haven't met anyone like that yet. Am I a Beinoni? Do I have both consciousnesses, but I always listen to what's correct? I strive to be that. So in conclusion, with introducing the idea that we have two souls, I hope that everyone has the ambition and desire to be just normal, to just be an average person, a Beinoni. And with this ambition to be a Beinoni, to be an intermediate person, with just ambition, before you even start any work, you will automatically be a better person than the average person. Because if you're not aware that you have a conscience that tells you to do just like you feel like it, things just because you feel like it, you don't even know to even challenge yourself. With knowing that you have a conscience which is self-centered, and you know you have a conscience which battles that, then we have a chance of winning this battle, this constant battle that's within us. Now, this might be a little bit revolutionary to some of you, and it might be something that's difficult to accept, that we have our conscience that's literally controlling. It's literally controlling ourselves almost. It's making us feel like, and then what we feel like is. But there's a simple exercise that we can each put to this. Try to go through a 24-hour period without speaking about yourself or using the word I. If you do that, then I can gladly say, or you can probably assume that you are a tzaddik, that you have no selfish ambition whatsoever. But if you're like me, see, I'm talking about myself already, I lost already. But if you're like me, then you will realize that, yeah, it's a good exercise to think about yourself a little bit less. However, it's an exercise that I have to work on. To drive home this idea that feeling yourself too much is a cause of bad attributes, in particular anger. I like to conclude with sharing a nice old Hasidic tale. It was an individual which lived in Europe. He was a Hasidic Jew. He was extremely wealthy. So every time he would come back from his business trip, he would go to shul, he would go to synagogue, and they gave him all these different honors in synagogue. They called him up to the Torah, and they gave him the front seat in shul, etc., etc. And in his mind, the greatest honor was to get the last aliyah. For him, the greatest honor was to be the last one to be called up to the Torah. Like this, he's the one that concludes the Torah reading every week. And everyone knew that he's a philanthropist, he's wealthy, he's connected. We got to give him what he wants. And that's the way it was for years and years and years. When he came to town, everybody knew who's going to get the last, who's going to be being called to the Torah for the last one that week. Anyway, one time he comes back from his business trip, and he decided to go into the Rebbe that lived in that town. Great tzaddik, a spiritual leader. He went to talk to him. What is he going to talk to him about? He said, listen, I feel like I work on myself. I feel like I'm a pretty good person. However, I get angry very quickly. And when I get angry, nobody wants to be around me. And I hate the way I act. I let people know. So the Rebbe, the spiritual leader, is just, He's like, Rebbe, you don't understand. I get angry. I blow up. I blow a fit. It's like, that's nothing. What do you mean? He says, nothing. Just don't be angry. Anyway, he sees there's no one to talk to, so he takes leave. Immediately, the Rebbe calls the spiritual leader, calls the guy, the Gabbai. The Gabbai is the one that's in charge in the synagogue of giving out the honors to the Torah, to the Torah reading. Calls him over. The spiritual leader, the Rebbe, is calling him, so he goes running. The Rebbe says, I know every time this wealthy individual comes to town, you give him you give him the ultimate honors. This week, I want you to give him nothing. Nothing. I don't want to hear of it. I want you to make sure that he doesn't get any honors whatsoever. So the Gabbai doesn't question the Rebbe, obviously, but he's very nervous. He knows what's going to happen if he doesn't give the guy, if he doesn't give the wealthy man his attention. He knows he's at the end of the stick. He's going to blow a fit, and he's going to lose his job, and he's going to make his life miserable. So he's thinking, he goes home, he discusses with his wife, he comes up with the ultimate solution. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to the wealthy man. And this is what he does. He goes to the wealthy man. He says, listen, wealthy individual, I know you always get the ultimate honor. And I love you. I would most gladly give it to you. However, the Rebbe, the spiritual leader that you respect more than anyone else in the world, called me and told me, this week I gotta forgo that honor for you. So please understand that I'm not gonna call you up. Anyway, comes the Torah reading, comes Shabbat, and everybody's looking at the wealthy man, and he's always very proud of himself, and he prepares himself before he goes up, and he straightens his tie and everything. And they're looking at him, and he's sitting relaxed in his chair as if he's not going anywhere. And they're watching the Gabbai. Is he going to call him up, or he's going to let him know that his turn is next, is coming up. It's very soon. He's preparing himself. Nothing. Comes the final aliyah, the final opportunity to call him up to the Torah, and he doesn't call him up for that either. They said maybe they're going to give him a different honor. Maybe he's going to hold the Torah. Maybe he's going to be the cantor. Maybe something. Nothing. And everybody's watching in amazement how this guy didn't even break a sweat. The wealthy man is sitting there happy and content as can be. Okay. After the service is over, everybody takes leave, and he stays in his seat. And the Rebbe comes over to him and says, no, I see you listen to my advice. You just didn't get angry. It's not such a big deal. He says, Rebbe, I knew it was a test. I knew you were behind this. I knew you were testing me to see if I'm going to be angry. Of course I didn't get angry. The Rebbe said, listen up. That's exactly the point. Anytime there's something that might anger you, all you got to know, it's a test. God's testing you. What happened over here? Normally, he had this conscience that took control over him. All he thought about was my honor. How is everybody going to see how I get the biggest honor? I'm the biggest macher in town. Today, what happened? He said, I didn't think about myself. I know it's not my turn. I'm not the biggest guy today. I'm not going to get the ultimate honor today. I'm not going to get the ultimate honor today. Okay. So then there's no reason to get upset or offended. This gives you a great example of what the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animalistic soul, does, and therefore the way it acts. If we don't think we deserve the whole world, then there's nothing truly that can anger us. If we know that God's running the world, we don't necessarily have to understand what he's doing. But if we know that it's not everything that happens in this world is because of what I deserve or what I can achieve, then there's no challenge that can pull me down, because everything is part of the plan. Yes, we still have to pray that we shouldn't have any tzaddis, we shouldn't have any diseases, and God should take away all these terrible calamities. But nonetheless, for whatever the reason is, there's a purpose for it. Just like when someone's sick, they go to the doctor to get healed. That does not take away from his faith that God runs the world and that God brought the sickness to him, and there's a reason for it. He still has to heal himself. Likewise, it's true with any challenge that comes our way. And the challenge is to be conscious of this. If it's not about how I feel, if it's not all about me, then it cannot get me upset. It cannot get me angry. It cannot get me sad or depressed. It can't even make me feel empty. So to conclude, today we introduced to the concept of tzaddik, rasha, and a beinoni. We introduced to what a tzaddik is. We introduced what a righteous, the deeper meaning of what a righteous person is, the deeper meaning of what a evil person is, and a deeper meaning of what an intermediate person is. And we understood that by understanding that each one of us are made up of two souls. And we spent the time today introducing the first soul, the soul called the animalistic soul, the soul that wants to feel and wants to survive, and what actually keeps us alive as well. But its shortcomings is that it's egocentric and it's self-centered. Next time we will speak about the next soul, the godly soul, and how its ambitions is to grow greater than itself.